Hello, you lovely, lovely people. First of all, I've got to say thank you for the lives this morning, for the super chats and things. Thank you very much for the people in the live, and thank you for all my subscribers, incidentally, as well. And thank you for the support that you always give. Today's topic is going to be about, not that, it's going to be about when I split up from the girl that I was with when I originally came here. And this was before I got with Mira, but Mira lived in the same area. So I got this little apartment and didn't know anyone around there because it was in a different place to where I was living when I first come here. Oh, sorry people, I'm trying to get this gimbal right. And I had this little, like a studio apartment, it was a separate toilet, but the kitchen was in the living room and the bed was in the living room. It was big enough for me. And there was lots of like teenage boys around there. They were okay, and they, because I was the only foreigner there, and they used to come around, and one or two of them had really good English, which was nice and pleasant. And I had this bad hip at this particular time. I haven't got it now. I don't know what it was. I think it was where I was being sat down on the internet and all that kind of stuff, and it was like a trapped nerve, I think. And I had this for weeks, and it wouldn't go away, and I was having trouble sleeping with it. And no matter how many tablets I was taking, pain relief, ibuprofen, all that, it just wasn't really getting rid of the pain. So one of the boys who asked the person selling fish, one of the fish vendors going by, he said, "Oh, my mum, she does massage and all that." And I later discovered what they call a whack doctor. Whack doctor. So I kind of thought, well, I can't have anything to lose by having this. So he introduced me to his mum, and his mum was around about, I don't know, she was about 10 years younger than me, I would think. In fact, she was about 10 years younger than me. Quite a nice looking woman, very slim. And anyway, he introduced me to her, and she spoke reasonably good English as well. And like I said, this was before I got with Mira, my wife now. So she said, "Yeah," I'll give you a massage. And I thought, okay, great. And I said, whenever you've got time. So they lived behind me, 20 yards away behind my apartment where I was living. So I went back into my house, and there was like a knock on the door within 5 minutes, and it was her. And she had all of this oily stuff, this I don't know what it was, like a liniment as they call it here. And she said, "I've come to give you a massage." Okay. And she said, "Take your top off, and take your bottoms off." I had shorts on, boxer shorts. And I was laid on my stomach. And anyway, she started massaging me. And this massage went on for like 3 hours. And nothing happened. Nothing happened, okay? And I thought, this is a bloody long massage. And I said at the end of it, I said, "How much do you want?" Well, like, it's up to you. So I give her 1,000 pesos. And she was really happy. And afterwards, I couldn't walk. Really. She was pulling and pushing him. Oh my God, all these different positions. The end of the day, she made it worse. I couldn't walk for like days afterwards. I was really limping and struggling. Anyway, this girl, she kept coming round, and she says, "Can I charge my phone?" Because where she was, they didn't have any electric. They only had candles. And the person who was renting her little shack off, and it was a shack, it was made of bamboo and coconut wood, there was no electric in there. So she couldn't charge her phone. Now I used to think, well, yeah, it's okay. So she used to come around all the time charging her phone, and she'd go and come back and pick her phone up after a couple of hours. Then I was doing my washing. I was just laba, as they call it, laba, doing my hand washing. And she said, "I'll do that for you." I said, "No, it's okay." She said, "No, I'll do that." So she took over, really just took over. And then, she did the washing, hung it out. And because of the Philippines, how it is, there was a lot of people starting to gossip, all right, because this girl was coming to the house quite often, charging her phone, and she started doing my washing on a regular basis, and I thought, well, what's going on here? And people said to me, Stephen, watch her. Like the people around me, the Filipinos, and they were like giggling and all that. I said, watch her. Are you two going out together? No, certainly not. And this was going on for weeks. And then she started cooking for me, coming around the house with vegetables and started cooking. And I thought, oh. And she said, can you employ me as a maid? I said, okay. And I said, we arranged the price and that. But she was round all the time, people. She kept coming round all the time. And there was a couple of times, and I found out later, in fact, I found out while she was coming around the house, she was a bit of a drinker. And when she got drunk, she was quite aggressive. Not to me, but to other people. And there was one particular time, I'd been drinking in this videoke, and she was there. And she was there with her sister. So I had a couple of songs and she was singing. I finished my beer and I went home. The next thing, at the door, knock at the door. And she said, Stephen. I thought, Jesus Christ, what do I do? Do I let her in or what? So I kind of, she kept saying, I know you're in there. I thought, oh, God almighty. And then what happened? She phoned my phone and started ringing, so she knew I was in there. Oh, shit. Opened the door. I can't remember her name. Oh, yeah, Loretta. Her name was Loretta, or Lorena. And I said, Loretta, what do you want? And she said, she says, my ex-boyfriend, here we go. My ex-boyfriend is going to come round and cause trouble for her. And I said, look, I don't want anything to do with this. No, I said, you're just, here to do whatever you're doing, like you wanted, to do like the maid work and all that. She says, no, it's nothing about you. I thought, oh, thank God for that. And she says, when he's drunk, he gets aggressive. And I thought, yeah, so do you. I thought, oh, God, so what do I do here? She says, can I stay at your house tonight? I thought, oh, God, only had one bed. I thought, oh. She says, please. Okay, you sleep at at my place. So I'm lying in the bed. By this time, I put my clothes on, right? And you guys out there might be saying, no, you didn't. I did. Because I didn't want to be sucked into a whirlwind of trouble here. So I put my, my shorts back on. So I was in boxer shorts and a t-shirt. And she, was fully dressed on top of the bed. Went to sleep. She must have went to sleep. Nothing happened. She didn't try touching or anything like that. Next morning, people saw her leave my house because people were up here very early. And I think she left 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Probably with the idea that no one would see her. But she was spotted. Then I was the talk of this little place where I was. She stayed at your house and blah, blah, blah. And at the time I was talking to Mira, but we weren't together. And then I saw Mira's face when I went to the shop, and she wasn't talking to me anymore, Mira. I said, what's the matter, me? No, nothing. It was because of this, the gossip going around. So anyway, I thought, I've got to stop this. I can't have this. So I told her, I said, look, thank you, for your help, but I don't think I need it no more. I said, I can do it myself. And then she got arsey. And she said, is it okay if I keep, come round and charging my phone? I thought to myself, well, no, not really. That's what I thought to myself. I said, yeah, okay. And she come round charging her phone, and she asked, could she borrow money? And I said, no. I said, I don't borrow money. I said, I said, I don't lend it, should I say. And she says, it's for my son's motorcycle so he can get to college and all that, or school. I said, no. I said, I don't lend money. And then she turned really nasty, honestly, really nasty. She used to get drunk, come round, throw stones at my door, and I knew it was her. So I thought, what do I do about this? I thought, I've just moved from one situation and moved into another. I've jumped out the frying pan into the fire through no doing of my own, I don't think. And this got worse. And then she threatened me with her boyfriend. She said, my boyfriend knows about you. I said, yeah, and? what is there to tell? And she says, oh, you know, the time I stopped at your house. I said, yeah, and I put you up because you were scared to go home because you said your ex-boyfriend was an ex-boyfriend. That's what she said at the time, but it wasn't. It was a boyfriend. They just didn't live together because the boyfriend was already married, you see. He was married and he just used to come round her for a bit of, how's your father? And she said, you know, I've told my boyfriend about you and he's going to come and get you. I said, what? Come and get me for what? You know, for giving you a job that I could have done on my own. I thought I was doing you a favour. And I thought, dear me. And I said to, what was his name? There's a guy up the road and he said to me, like, she's trouble. I can't remember his name. But he was a tuba pilot. He used to go and get the tuba from the coconut trees. And he told me, he says, oh, Stephen, she's buang. She's buang, that meant, you know, that girl. And she was, really. Very thin, but God, a bad temper. And I said, look, I said, you know, like, I don't want you around the house no more. I don't want you charging your phone here. I said, I don't want you in my house. And for her to get to her house, she used to have to pass my apartment. I thought, oh, God, here she is. So then, rather than me going into my apartment, I'd be sat out on the front. I'd see you come down. I'd just sit and say, hello, no speaking. And then one time I come home, and it was a Sunday, and I'd been drinking with some Filipinos, wasn't drunk, happy. And my door was broken in. The door was broken in. Oh, God almighty, what's happened here? And all the local people were there. And I said, what's happened? Have I been robbed? And they said, no, it's Loretta or Lorena. Can't remember her name properly. I said, yeah. And she said, she says, she said that you took her phone off her and she's just gone into the house to get it. I said, what, breaking in? And they said, yeah, you know, we heard the banging and, you know, the next thing, she was in the house. And she did. Like, I used to have a little bit of money that I used to leave and she saw it. And I think it wasn't a lot. It was just, you know, like a money that I wouldn't take out with me, you know, when I was going for a drink. It wasn't a lot of money. I think about 10,000 pesos. And she took it, right? And I thought, you bastard. I know, it needs her. So I thought, what do I do? And they said, is anything gone? I said, yeah, 10,000 pesos. But everything else is intact. Oh, and she took my charger as well. My charger. So I thought, what do I do about this? So they said, go to the barangay. And I thought, no, if I go to the barangay captain, I'm going to open up, you know, he's going to make it worse for me. So I went to see her. I said, you broke into my house. I said, you know, there's two choices here. Either you stop doing it and you leave me alone. Otherwise, I'm going to go to the barangay and do a blotter. And she broke down crying. Oh, you don't know what's happening to me and this, that, and the other. I said, look, I don't care about your life. I said, this only started over a massage, which I paid you for. Then you started doing my washing. Then you started coming around cooking for me. I didn't ask you to do this. And she just wouldn't leave it alone. It was like that, fatal attraction. It was like fatal attraction where, you know, the bloody, what was it in the, you know, like a rabbit in the, you know, like in the stew pot. It was like that. Honest to God, he was getting like that. And then I thought, I can't have this. Like, you know, so I'm going to have to move away. Which I did. I moved a little, it wasn't far away, people. It wasn't far away. But I moved out of the way. And then she still pestered and pestered and pestered. And then I got with Mira. Then me and Mira got together. Not sleeping together, but just going out together. And she's tried to, you know, this Lorena or Loretta tried to tell me that Mira wasn't as old as what she said she was. And I thought, nah, Mira wouldn't do that to me. She wouldn't say that she was this age and she was younger. No, that wouldn't happen. And so I said to Mira, Mira, have you got a birth certificate? And it was a horrible thing to say. But this woman kind of put this in my head. So I said to Mira, have you got any ID? And she said, yeah, why? I said, because Loretta said that, you know, like, because Mira at the time, she was 23. And Loretta had tried to say that she was 18, which is still old enough. But I thought, well, God almighty, that's too young for me. And Mira, bless her heart, took it well, really, because she could have thought, well, why taking notice of her and not me? You know, why don't you believe me? But Mira did get a birth certificate, and I saw it. I thought, lying cow, that woman. And she was still trying to cause trouble. So Mira being Mira, she's very passive. And I thought she was just going to leave it because Mira's Mira, but she didn't. She went round there and saw her with her relation, with her cousin. I never had no more trouble. I never had no more trouble. So what I'm saying, people, the moral of this story is even if you're single, right, and you get you kind of meet somebody and they come like the opposite sex, and they come across as wanting to help you out, think twice about it, because they might have ulterior motives. Now, this girl, what I learned, she wanted to go out with me. That's what she wanted, but she didn't want to go out with me because of my looks. She didn't, apparently. She wanted to go out with me because I'm a foreigner. So she was trying to bleed me dry if I'd have let her do that. So maids with benefits, maids with just no benefits, I would never, ever think about having one, really. Why do we need one? If you're retired in the Philippines, you've got all the time in the world. If you're single, to do your own stuff, you don't need a maid. Because I'm telling you something, if you get a maid for that reason, and you aren't thinking of ulterior motives of bedding your maid or something like that, but it could turn nasty like it did in this scenario. And this was a long time ago, people, 8 years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, just before I got with Mira. Yeah, it's got to be 8 years ago. And it could have turned really nasty, this. Now, again, I didn't know all of these things, that what people can do to you here, like Filipina can make up an allegation against you, and she could have done that because we was sleeping in the same room for that one night. Now, she could have easily have gone to the barangay and said, look, and that could have ended really badly for me. I just didn't know these things. So just think about it, people. Just think about it. It's just food for thought for you people, because it's happened to me and it could happen to anybody. So when you find someone who you think is really good looking and you think, yeah, it's okay, yeah, they can come in and do a bit of this and a bit of that for me, the washing and the cooking, it's not worth it, because they can easily turn it round onto you and you could end up in shit street by doing a good deed, by trying to do someone a good turn. That's it, people. That's it. End of story. Again, thank you to all my subscribers, and thank you for the support and always coming back and watching the videos. It helps. And I'm over and out. See you again next time.